Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Thank you for your patience. This is the Falcoholic Live's Falcons vs. Cardinals Week 17 post-game show. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, Alan Strk at Alan Strk. Alan, how are we doing today?
Just trying to find takeaways because we're at that point of the season where it's just players are playing, teams are just competing, and I don't know what can we take away from this that's truly meaningful other than Desmond Ridder's development.
Yeah, I think that's really the only thing. I mean, the defense is so bad. I mean, they literally can't stop anyone. I mean, I didn't love the very, very conservative defense. It's like funny because their coverage was so soft, but Dean Pease was extremely aggressive with the blitzes. So it was such a weird I mean, I guess I get it, but the defense is so handicapped in terms of talent. They just, I feel like they can't even run a functional defense. Like, it's that far gone. Like, they had a couple of guys they really couldn't afford to lose. And I think Casey Hayward was one. And Taquan Graham, as surprising as it sounds, was another one. And they are just, I mean, outside of Grady Jarrett, I don't think a single other person on that interior defensive line would start or maybe even be on another NFL roster right now. I mean, maybe Abdullah Anderson. He's
contributing a little bit.
Yeah.
He knows how to use his hands, even though he has like a moment every game where you want him to finish or play in the backfield and he whiffs. But that could be common with D tackles.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't want to slander Abdullah Anderson, but everybody else gets slandered for sure. Yeah, the defense is ugly. I mean, I guess we'll start there. We'll get that out of the way, but there are definitely some good things to take away from this game. Like you mentioned, Desmond Ridder's performance was one, and then Tyler Allgeier again just being the guy to such an extent where it would shock me that if running back is a significant need for this team because of how well he's playing. All this despite a revolving door at left guard that has continued because Elijah Wilkinson was out once again. So the run game is definitely something that we can call a positive, and special teams and all that. But yeah, let's start off with the defense because that was by far the most difficult thing to watch in this game. I mean, getting carved up by a guy who's been on the practice squad for a couple weeks on an Arizona passing offense that is down their top receiver. No slander meant towards Greg Dortch. I think he and Hollywood Brown are still pretty good wide receivers, but that offensive line is one of the worst in football. The Falcons could barely generate pressure. Just a really difficult watch, I guess, is the kindest thing I can say. Very frustrating. The run defense was okay, like it usually is. I mean, James Conner was up over 4.9 yards per carry, but he didn't take over the game, I guess. So David Blau lights you up for 220 plus yards and a touchdown, which is not that many yards in the grand scheme of things, but still, I mean, he could have had a lot more if his receivers didn't fall over. So where do you want to start, Alan? Go ahead.
Because I did like the blitz push, but part of it, I just don't think the players executed all that well. It just seemed like, the Cardinals got comfortable, picking it up, particularly with their running backs, but I just thought it could have been executed better, whether it's the linebackers or safeties. Like, it worked well the first row with Isaiah Oliver. Yeah. But then it just, whether it was Jalen Hawkins or Sean Evans, Troy Anderson, it just seemed like either they couldn't get off blocks or they just didn't find the right lane. It just, I don't know, everything seemed discombobulated. I was like, there's opportunities to be had there. And on the secondary side, just like there could have been at least 3 or 4 completions of 20 plus yards or more. And it's just, I don't understand how Cordell Armstrong's still getting snaps. I thought, who was it? D. Alford, who had a decent game, but he got away with it here and there. It just seemed like the corners were in a bit of a pickle here now and then. So I stick with the better personnel. This defense would have got exploited pretty bad today, and they kind of got away with it.
Yeah, I shudder to think at what Colt McCoy would have done because I feel like he would have went off for like 300 plus yards even without DeAndre Hopkins. So.
Colt McCoy, one of the top backups in the league.
Yes.
When healthy, I would agree.
Yes, exactly. Like, Colt McCoy is not a slouch. Like, don't get me wrong, but he definitely would have had his way with this defense, and that is rough to see because, like I said, the offensive line is one of the worst in football. The Falcons could barely generate pressure. They couldn't generate anything without blitzing. And even when they blitzed, they didn't get home that often. So the linebackers are definitely a problem spot too. Troy Anderson, you get it. Like, they're giving him as many reps as he can, but he's not comfortable in zone coverage at all right now. It's just not something that's something you have to learn. You have to get a lot of experience in to know like where to drop and where to sort of drift in that coverage. A lot of that is something you pick up over time. I wasn't expecting Troy Anderson to be used in zone coverage this much. Like, this is a perfect man coverage linebacker that he doesn't have zone instinct. So the fact that they just keep dropping him in zone over and over again and just watching him get shredded, it's like it's not helping him, Troy Anderson. I mean, I guess it's giving him experience, which is maybe all they care about, but I really thought he'd get more opportunities in man coverage with his athleticism, and I feel like they put him in the worst possible position.
Yeah, well said. I just wish, man, maybe because he's just still raw, but like it's his instincts. I just wish he could identify plays better, considering all the snaps he's played now. I thought he was better against Baltimore last week, but today was just more of the same, where it's just like he seems to step behind, or he's just not anticipating as quickly as enough. Because you see, like certain linebackers in the league, they just know explode right away, like just telegraph a play and hit on it. But between him and I thought Richie Grant, like we talked about size concerns, it just seemed like him trying to cover Trey McBride. There was like multiple occasions where McBride just used his body and made plays over him, and just someone that you want to see attempt to cover safeties. It's a bit alarming that Richie Grant just doesn't quite, he has decent coverage, but he just can't make plays on the ball.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where the defensive needs are coming into clearer focus. And I think safety is absolutely up there. Jalen Hawkins simply doesn't have the range on the back end. And honestly, Grant hasn't been that much better, but they're not, this pass defense is so vulnerable deep because the safeties just can't they have to play them so deep that it takes them out of the run game, and they don't have the range to make plays even when they are back there. So I think their safety situation puts the Falcons in a big bind. So I do think, we talked about Jesse Bates and free agency for safety, and I do think that's a place that they're going to go spend to get a veteran in here because they desperately need a high-end safety. The safety is so important in DMP's defense, and Richie Grant, Jalen Hawkins, I think we had all the hope in the world for them. I do think they will look better with an actual pass rush in front of them, just like everybody in the secondary will, but I don't think you can go into 2023 with that duo both starting. I think they're probably going to go with Grant and give him more opportunities, which I don't disagree with. I think he can still do it, but they need that blue chip guy across from Grant. Like they need somebody that's really going to actually provide high end play, considering how important the position is.
Yeah, and I believe Hawkins is a Dimitrov pick, correct?
Yes, that's right. 2020.
And we've already seen how Mykal Walker has kind of been pushed to the wayside. So I could see, Smith and Fun trying to prioritize their guys. I know it might not be right at times, but it's just how organizations, particularly new regimes, even though I'll stop saying new regime because we're about 2 full seasons now. It's not really a new regime anymore, but the current regime with their personnel, they're going to go all the way invested in it.
Yeah, and Jalen Hawkins is a really good third safety. Like I think he's certainly I would say he's like a fringe starter at the NFL level. So having him, I mean, you're not going to cut him or anything, but I think you're looking for more from your starter than Hawkins at this point. And we're just going to have to hope that Grant can look better with the pass rush in front of him. And I think it will, particularly because Grant's skill set, he's so aggressive, and I think he really tries to play it that way. But when the offense has so much time, like his aggressiveness is going to get used against him a lot, and I don't think like having him cover deep for like 3, 4, 5 seconds is really going to be a beneficial place for him to be. And I'm hoping that he's one guy that in particular will look a lot better when they get a real NFL defensive line in here. We still obviously have a long way to go with that, but just really disappointing game. AJ Terrell, I thought, had a good performance, of course, and Isaiah Oliver, maybe one of his best games of the season.
Yes.
So that's nice to see. But yeah, it wasn't good at all against a Cardinals offense that really shouldn't have been this effective. But I mean, you look at the raw stats, it really doesn't look that bad. The Falcons held an opponent under 20 points for like the 4th straight game, right? So it's just like the ugliest possible low-scoring game that I've ever seen. They pulled it off. And like they did get hosed by the officials too. Like D. Alford's DPI, that was one of the worst calls I've ever seen. So
I did not know what happened there.
Yeah. So it's just
they're going against backup competition, so that's why how much stock you put into it. Like it's kind of like last year where they had like a stretch of games where it was just going against backup caliber QBs, and now we're seeing it again. So it's just, I don't know, these games are so hard to dissect. It's like, okay, you want to see what film is on the field and you want to assess the talent, but it's just like a lot of it's, you see the play action, you see the draws, and it's just like, it's so easy to get chunk yards on this defense. That's the thing. And then it just feels like the Cardinals left a lot of plays out in the field, which you expect a functional offense to be able to produce.
Yeah, yeah. So it's sort of like I don't give the defense a pass at all, because it's like this defense, they did get hosed by some bad calls, but like at least 3 plays Cardinals receivers just like tripped or just dropped a pass. So I think that sort of cancels out, and it makes this still pretty poor game by the defense in general. The offense, it wasn't pretty either. And I do want to give Desmond Ridder a lot of props, because there were some really, like, if you wanted to pick his best throws from this game, there was a lot here to really like. And I think there were some top end throws that give you a lot of hope. I mean, it's still not a great day. 19 of 26, very high completion percentage here, so that's nice. But just 169 yards. The Falcons basically relied on the run game to take them home again, and that's fine. You know, the run game did show up today. It wasn't one of their best outings, but it was enough to get it done. But really, like, I think Ridder, especially late, he put together some very good drives, and he kept this one in play, and ultimately did come away with exactly what they needed to close this game out and get the win. So he has his first game-winning drive. He gets his first win. I know everyone's mad about the draft pick. We're going to talk about that too, but it's ultimately, to me, it's like, if you want Ridder to be the future or have any future with this team, he can't be 0-4 going into 2023. There's no way they give him the reins when he's 0-4. So getting this one win, I think, is really important for him. Even if it wasn't the prettiest, there were some throws that I mean, there were some wow throws in this, and that's what you're looking for. That you're just those glimmers of hope enough to convince you to not trade up for a quarterback, because that's what the Falcons are going to have to do if they want CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. I think he's shown enough now with 2 sort of positive games in a row, with the Ravens game and this game, where again the Falcons got hosed by officials and had touchdowns taken off the board. So yeah, what did you think about Ridder's performance today?
Before we get to that, you really thought the Patterson that should have been a touchdown? Because
yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think I agree with the rule. Like with better rule set, I've kind of succumbed to the rules now, where it's just like, if he doesn't control possession, I'm just so used to it. Like, I think back in 10 years ago, absolutely, but now it's just, I don't know, the NFL is kind of, with their flawed rules, just ingrained into my brain, where I'm just like, I just accept that if you don't have full possession for a good 2 seconds afterwards, it's not going to be it. But that said, his body was down, and
I think that I agree with what you're saying.
It's just, at this point, I'm just like, all right, I guess not. Like, I don't know, NFL just kind of beat into my brain. But nevertheless, I thought Ridder definitely had a good performance. That throw to Demir Bird, what a thing of beauty. You want to talk about egregious calls? It's at least a second or 2, a minimum a second, potentially 2 seconds, where I don't know who the DB was, but he had a grip of his arm, right here. It couldn't have been more evident.
Textbook.
And it's just such a blatant miss. But you still see the rapport there with London strong. I love there was one play where the pocket was collapsing, and he kind of, his pocket movement and just awareness in general much improved this week. I just think, look, playing at home, favorable opponent, not having to go against 2 arguably top 10 defenses, because I think New Orleans defense is still very much legit, and Baltimore's defense since Roquan got there has been unbelievable. So I think just finally being in a better environment certainly helped, but you could tell Arthur Smith put him in positions where it's just okay, we're gonna get the ball out quickly. Let's get into some sort of rhythm. We're not gonna take these 5-7 step drops where you're throwing go balls downfield like it was against New Orleans. So, it was good to see Smith acclimate his game plan a little bit to Ridder, and they ultimately produced the result, even though I felt like the throws were pretty standard. There was a few wow throws, but it wasn't anything that, I don't know. I just think, given, I guess, the offense, we should keep our expectations relatively low rather than expect some sort of I don't know, Trevor Lawrence-esque thing right now.
I think you have to grade it on a curve to some extent, because without Kyle Pitts, there's just nothing else other than Drake London out there. I mean, Michael Pruitt, I think, is a perfectly serviceable tight end, but Drake London is the only passing game threat. Ridder has no rapport whatsoever with Olamide Zaccheaus right now. It's sad to say it, but there's nothing there, and Kadero Hodge and Zacchaeus just aren't getting open right now. I mean, Zacchaeus was open on a few plays that Ridder missed, so I'm not trying to throw him under the bus. I still think he's a guy you'd like to bring back, but just right outside of Drake London right now, there's just nobody really making plays in the passing game. And it's making things really difficult. And to be fair, like the offensive line pass blocking was not good today. Now, I think the Cardinals deserve a lot of credit. Vance Joseph knew he was down multiple starters in the secondary, so he dialed it up. They brought pressure. They crowded the line of scrimmage. They made things very difficult for the run game and for Ridder, who was facing pressure constantly. So props. I mean, I think Vance Joseph called a great game on defense that really helped sort of cover up their limitations at corner. Because I think if Ridder had clean pockets, this could have been a massacre.
All right. I think he's been perennially underrated as a defensive coach, Vance Joseph. Like, he's one of those coaches that should just stay as a DC. So I think he's had that defense overachieving. And this was just the worst time to have Matt Hennessy a left guard, because Matt Hennessy always has just communication
He can't
issues.
pass protect. He just can't.
Yeah.
And he was a great run blocker today, but
true. Yeah. It goes beyond JJ Watt bullying. Look, JJ Watt's gonna bully a lot of people. It's just there's just times where, especially if they run twists, like, he just never seems to make the right decision. Like him and Dalton at times, just he was getting beat one way, or he wasn't picking up his assignment another way. It's just a liability there. If you can't pass block in this league, you're just not going to be a starter. I don't care how good of a run blocker you are.
Yeah, and the Falcons are working with a complete turnstile at left guard right now. Like, every time Elijah Wilkinson seems to get his footing back, he just gets hurt again. It's tragic. But Matt Hennessy, like, he's a good run blocker. Maybe that's what they need to win games right now. But I mean, I think we've seen more from Colby Gossett, honestly. But yeah, I mean, they certainly do need an infusion on the interior. Like, Chris Lindstrom's awesome, but like, center is a problem. I don't care what anyone says about Drew Dahlman. I'm not going into 2023 with him as my starter. I'm just not going to do that. Like,
he just has these moments as a run blocker.
Yeah,
but
he does. He's a backup, is what he is. Like, he is your primary interior backup, and that's what he is. And a spot starter, sure. And he can have a long NFL career as that type of player. Like, and for the 4th round pick, that's still a good pick. Like, anyone that contributes in a meaningful way is a good 4th round pick. Any day 3 picks in general. So, like, I'm not trying to crap on Dahlman, but there's no way that's what you want from your center. You want so much. I mean, think about what Alex Mack brought to this offense, and with how important this running game is. The Falcons would be fools to not try to get to that. Like, there's no way this offense becomes great without a center that's better than Drew Dahlman. So I do firmly believe that center is a primary need next year, more than left guard, because I think they've shown they can get by with left guard being sort of meh. Like, it's okay as long as that left guard can run block, then it's fine. But center, I just don't think you can cheap out at center. Like, and it's not a great free agent class, so unfortunately I think they're going to be back in the draft looking for a center, but it's a great center class in the draft. So, but I did want to get to one donation real quick, guys. We are running the Senior Bowl donation drive here. So if you're interested in asking a question, donate at streamlabs.com/Falcoholic/tip. It's all going to our Senior Bowl travel fund. We appreciate everyone for contributing to that. Thanks, guys, so much. Ray Moon with the $5. Thank you so much, Ray. He says, all right, defensive line or DB? I mean, I'm definitely favoring the defensive lineman, but depending on where the Falcons are drafting, if it's like the third edge or the second or third defensive tackle versus the number 1 corner, I think you take the corner, and I think you're probably pretty happy with that. But then you have to go hard at the defensive line in free agency and later and on day 2. But I think you're probably okay taking the best player of either of those positions. But what do you think about that, Alan?
Yeah, I don't want to use the dreaded 3 letters BPA, but I do think you just have to assess the talent and what's the best fit. We also have to see what happens in free agency. But yeah, just look up front. It has to be a priority. Like, you want to see some high end talent there. Just because it's just painful to watch. Like, Ebiketie, like, he's anonymous. Malone's not getting much reps. This seems like you gotta give him more than 1 year, of course, but just for the fact that this draft class of edge rushers hasn't really flashed this year is hugely disappointing. And you got Lorenzo Carter playing 60 snaps a game. It's a nightmare right now. So at some point, just like, can you get someone that's truly high end, someone that, whether it's a huge prospect or a free agent that will. I know it's not great free agent class for edge rushers from what I've seen, but just someone that I think you could put the onus on, where it's just like, okay, you're going to be the driving force behind their pressure. That's
Yeah.
what they need at this point. Like, it's just the whole complementary pieces. Like, yeah, you need complementary pieces, but this team needs a true alpha at whether it's edge rusher or even inside as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like, I mean, I'm definitely leaning more towards the defensive line as more likely to be the pick, but if they're picking, like right now they're picking at 7. So, and if the Bucs play their starters, I don't think the Falcons are going to win next week, let's be honest. But they could always
why would they play the starters at this point?
Because that team is awful and they need to try to build some sort of momentum going in the playoffs.
And Brian Bowles, Todd Bowles. I don't know where I got Brian Bowles from. Todd Bowles is, I guess, capable of making some pretty questionable decisions.
Yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, this Falcons team, like even if they win that game, I think the lowest they can pick is 10th. So like in that range, it's entirely possible that you see like 3 or 4 edge guys go and like 2 to 3 defensive tackles, probably 2. So I think it's very likely that you get to pick, 8, 9, whatever. And Joey Porter Jr. or like Christian Gonzalez is there. And it's like, well, this is the best corner in the draft. So let's just go with this guy and give us an elite corner duo. And I think you're pretty happy with that. And I mean, they need a blue chip player. I don't care who it is, just get one. I'd rather you take a blue chip player at a position of slightly lesser value than take a mediocre player or just an average starter with that pick. So go get your blue chip guy, because that's what this team needs. They need stars. They need talent. They need something to give this team at a talent level that's somewhat comparable with other NFL teams, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So let's see how it goes, but that's sort of where I'm leaning. We got Nico with the $1. Thank you so much, Nico. He says, is Arthur Smith the problem when it comes to incorporating guys like Calvin Ridley and Olamide Zaccheaus into a passing offense? P.S. Happy New Year to everyone at the Falcoholic.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Calvin Ridley, they tried to utilize him in a certain way that Ridley didn't really gel with at all. I don't know if that's Arthur Smith's fault for trying to peg Ridley into a square hole, or if Ridley wasn't really open to playing that role and he could have succeeded there. Like, I don't know. That's tough to answer. But Zaccheaus, I think, was having a pretty darn good season with Mariota as like a complementary option. So I think he's successfully incorporated Zaccheaus into the passing game. Ridley, he hasn't. But what do you think, Alan?
Ridley, definitely just too many in-breaking, too many slants. Like, it just seemed like he wanted to use Ridley like A.J. Brown, and proved to be a disaster. And look, Ridley was going through his own tribulations. So, there's maybe times where the drops were more mental errors than actually being scared of contact. But look, it's not right to make assumptions. It just didn't look right. With Zaccheaus, I don't know. I just think Zaccheaus is kind of a complimentary player at this point, but he's definitely someone that can be utilized more. It's just with these 5'9", 5'10" receivers, it's just you kind of want to run them on ISO routes, things that are outside the numbers. Like, you really don't want these guys running big, dig routes or slant routes. Like, they could run maybe drags, like do something that's underneath, but to put them 15 yards and then middle of the field, it's just like you're asking for trouble, because like Zaccheaus, he can make tough catches, but I wouldn't bet on him to make contested catches all the time. And really, he was never the greatest contested catch guy. You just want to utilize these guys' speed and route running abilities. Why do that across the middle of the field on such a consistent basis? So I just think you gotta look at the receivers and know how to utilize their skill set. And I do think Arthur Smith has, in a way, kind of fallen short in that at times. But look, he runs his own offense. We know that, and you saw in Tennessee he had those big bodies. That's why it wouldn't shock me if like they signed Corey Davis. I think Corey Davis, if I could make a prediction, he will be a Falcon next year.
Corey Davis, all right, good prediction there.
Because he is definitely not staying in New York, because his contract is crazy, and he's a bit injury prone.
He is, yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a wide receiver come in, and I think we'll definitely get to some free agency draft talk on the show. It is inevitable considering the time of year that it is. But great question there, Nico. But yeah, I mean, I think offensively, like, I think Ridder, this was what Ridder needed to sort of keep him starting in 2023 alive. Like, he needed to win this game and he needed to show something. And I think he did. So I think this is, if you're really high on Ridder, this was sort of the minimum that he needed to show, but I think it's enough to keep that dream alive. And he'll have an opportunity again next week, and we'll see if the Bucs play their starters or not. But we'll see what happens. But I liked Ridder's performance today. I thought it was good enough. There were some just great throws. That's what you want to see, really. Like, we know the passing game is limited. There's really only Drake London out there, and the offensive line is not pass protecting well. So it's really a question of like, well, can he show us enough flashes that it's like this is translatable when we get better pieces around him? And I think the answer was yes today, and against Baltimore too. Baltimore, they got really hosed by the officials, but they did today too. So that's two weeks in a row. Ritter's had, I think, touchdowns wiped off the board. But
that Baltimore game was criminal activity.
Yeah, it was egregious. I'm glad I wasn't watching it live because I would have been so pissed.
Man,
I was on a flight, thank God. But yeah, let's talk about Tyler Allgeier once again coming through 20 for 83 and a touchdown. Not his highest yards per carry, just 4.2. But I mean, just this man is really is showing that he's it. Like, he looks better than Cordarrelle Patterson. Like, I mean, he's showing natural receiving ability, soft hands. He's not a dynamic runner in terms of his explosiveness or long speed, but he's dynamic enough to rattle off these 10+ yard runs. And that's really all you need at running back in the NFL. I mean, he doesn't have the home run speed, but other than that, he's showing everything you possibly want to see. So what do you think about Tyler Allgeier so far, Alan?
That's what I mentioned. I'll we could cover this, but fortunately, I do have to head out a little earlier. I just want to mention that, but definitely want to talk about Allgeier because he's
real quick. I know you got to take off.
Human wrecking machine. And I think what's also most impressive, I didn't know how elusive he was. Like, you saw that check down where he didn't have to power through him like multiple times, just using that lateral agility and just shed 2 tackles to make it like, what could have been just a 1-yard check down into an 8-yard catch. Like, those are the types of small plays that you have to admire. And for someone that was phrased as this 2-down power back, like, no, he's showing to be a complete, well-rounded back, someone that can contribute to the passing game, someone that can handle blitz pickups. So there's definitely more to his game than just being that punishing running back, which we know we all love. It seems like, I don't know where he ranks, but I know he's averaging more than 3.5 yards per contact, per carry per contest. So it's just like, he's like, even I think against New Orleans, it was like 5.5, some absurd rate. So he's just someone that's just, you could just tell his confidence is sky high right now, and his vision's there. And look, there were some wide open lanes. Like, if you watch, like, both of us, we could have been getting into end zone. Like, there were some huge holes, but I love what he's doing after contact. And I just love, open field, you have confidence in him to make something even more of what's there, which is what you want to see from your running back.
Yeah, absolutely. And just having a great season. But yeah, Alan, I know you have to take off, so I will let you plug your stuff real quick. He's Alan Strk at Alan Strk on Twitter. Alan, anything you'd like to plug before you take off?
No, I'm in like creation mode. So a creation, not Croatia. Sorry. I'm in like, I got to create because like right now, like we're in a weird time. So it's just like, you got to try to think of ideas, but next week for sure, we will sign off the season properly. We'll do an hour-long show. Just New Year's right now is a little hectic for me, but I'm not sure right now. I'll have something this week though. That's all I can tell you.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Alan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right, guys. Well, now you're just stuck with me for the rest of the show, but yes. So I definitely want to give props to Tyler Allgeier. He's at, I think, 900 yards on the dot now. He's got one more game. So he'd have to get 100 yards to get to the 1,000-yard mark, which I think is certainly doable for him. I mean, it's a lot. He'd have to have a good game against the Bucs, who are no slouches against the run. But I do think that he's got a pretty good chance of getting there. I hope that they're able to make that happen for him, particularly if the Bucs do pull their starters, because the Bucs, they've been solid against the run, but they're still allowing 4.5 yards per carry. So, in total yardage, they're pretty average, but this is an opponent that you could potentially do that against. And Allgeier has only one game over 100 yards, but he does have a game of 99 yards and a couple of good ones here. And the Falcons have continued to up his carries every single week. So from weeks 12 on, he's had 11 carries, 10 carries, then 17, 18 last week, now 20 this week. So I think for sure he's got a good chance to get to 1,000 to break the Falcons rookie rushing record that William Andrews currently holds. He'd need to get 124 yards exactly. Again, if he has a great game, it's certainly within the realm of possibility. That's fewer yards than his biggest game this year, which of course was 139. But he'd have to have his second best game of the year to hit that mark. But it's not out of the realm of reasonable there with Allgeier. But him emerging as a great runner, a great running back, someone that can be your running back one, I think it's really beneficial for this Falcons offense and for the team building, because you don't necessarily need to go out and get an impact runner. I think you can rely on Allgeier to be that guy for you and just sort of make some smaller moves there. And that's what I would prefer. I really don't think they need to go draft Bijan Robinson. I mean, he's a great player, and if they have a really specific role for Bijan where he's going to play receiver too, and they're going to really use him uniquely like that, that's the only way I could get on board with it. But if he's just a running back, it's like, even if he's a great running back, how much does that really move the needle for this team? They've had great rushing all season, and it hasn't resulted in a lot of wins for them. So Bijan's a really special player who's really good. So I don't want to denigrate Bijan, but he's not going to be on my top 10, I imagine, for the Falcons in terms of targets. In terms of overall player talent, he might be. But there's also so many good running backs in free agency. They're going to be really cheap. Like, you can get a lot of these guys for minimum amounts of money and have a serviceable rotational guy, because Caleb Huntley is probably going to miss at least the first few weeks, maybe the first month, maybe more with his injury. So you probably need someone else in here other than Patterson, who's still under contract, to carry the load. I mean, maybe they bring back Damian Williams for another run. Maybe they go out and sign one of these guys to an affordable deal. I don't think they're going to spend a lot of money to do it, but I think they could also just throw a dart at like a 7th round running back, like an Anais Smith or something, or whoever you want. There's guys out there that I think could be Devin Achane, whatever, from Texas A&M. I like him a lot, as like a day 3 guy. So maybe you go that route. Don't spend a premium pick, because we know this team really needs to invest in the trenches, especially the defensive line, because I just don't think the offense is they can take you so far, but without a significant upgrade on the defensive line, it's just not going to really happen for you. So, at this point, for the Falcons, I wanted to give you guys a check-in on where they are in terms of the draft. And like I said, this one win doesn't really change anything for them. The Falcons are picking 7th. They were picking 6th before today. Doesn't really change much for this team. If the Rams were to somehow pull off the upset today against the Chargers, then the Falcons would be back to picking 6th again, so they wouldn't even move at all. If the Bucs don't play their starters next week, there's a good chance the Falcons win that game, which, is not great. But I think I don't think the Falcons get lower than 10. I just don't see it happening. The only team with 7 wins that has a strength of schedule even remotely close to Atlanta's is Seattle. They have a .466. Atlanta also has a .466, but the thing is, if the Falcons win, they will reduce their strength of schedule by giving a loss to the team they're playing. So that'll probably counteract things, and I would suspect that the Falcons will probably wind up at 9th or 10th at worst. So it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, it's not. I know people were hopeful for a top 4 pick, but it's not going to happen. I mean, they would need a lot of teams to win. So realistically, they were probably looking at about the 5th or 6th pick. Even if they lost to the Cardinals, I don't think they could do better than that 5th pick. I don't think Chicago or Denver or Indianapolis are winning another game. So, it's not a huge difference. I think getting in that top 4 was pretty meaningful, right? Because you have a legitimate shot at Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. But outside of that top 4, it's sort of a group of guys that I think are all pretty good. And as long as you draft one of those guys, I think I'd be pretty happy. And the most important thing now for this Falcons team is figuring out, can Ridder do it? Is he the guy? Is he enough of the guy to make this work. And ultimately, I think he's on the right trajectory after this game. It's not a slam dunk, but if he comes out and lights up the Bucs backups and looks great, then it's like, okay, then we feel comfortable doing this. But like, the biggest question for the Falcons right now is Ridder. Can he do it, right? Can Ridder be the guy? And I think so far I've seen enough to be like, I would strongly consider giving him the chance. I think he's shown enough in a bad situation. So right now, that's where I'm leaning. If he looks terrible against the Bucs backups next week or the Bucs starters or whatever, then I think, you have to change your calculus a little bit. But he did just enough today to sort of tilt the scales in his favor. And if Ridder is the guy and you just need to go out and get a good veteran backup, that opens up so much for the rest of your roster. You can afford, now you've got a rookie quarterback for 3 years. You can afford to spend this windfall of cap space to really flesh out everything around him. And like, intellectually, I like that the most. You don't have to give up significant draft capital for Lamar Jackson. You don't have to trade up to get a quarterback in the draft, and you don't have to spend major money bringing in what is likely to be a sort of mediocre veteran that's probably going to be a fringe top 15 quarterback. So I think that what you want is for Ridder to show enough next week that you can be like, okay, we need to at least give him a chance, and we'll bring in like a good veteran backup, like we mentioned Colt McCoy, right? I can't remember if he's a free agent or not, but someone that's, let's see. I know Dave Choate's a fan of Daniel Jones as a potential guy. I think he makes sense. I think like a Jacoby Brissett, though he may get starter money somewhere. Case Keenum is a solid veteran backup that has a lot of experience. I wouldn't be opposed to that at all if he doesn't go back to Buffalo. I think Kyle Allen of the Texans is a solid backup that is sort of a scheme fit here. We'll have to see. There's definitely some cheaper guys too. But I think ultimately you're just hoping to get somebody reliable behind Ridder, someone that can help teach him the ropes and be a backup in case he ever would have to miss time. But that's sort of where I am, and that's what I want to see at this point. Dr. Slick, I think that if Lamar Jackson it's clear that he is available on the trade market, that like everyone with a brain is going to try to get Lamar Jackson. They'd be fools not to at least look into it. I ultimately think the price will be too high for them to really do it. I think someone else will be more desperate, just like the Browns were. Look how well that's working out for them. So I think ultimately you're probably going to miss out on them. Even if he comes available, you're probably going to miss out on him to somebody else because I think the Falcons will sort of have a firm ceiling for how much they're willing to offer. But other than that, I mean, if Ryan Tannehill gets cut, I think there's a pretty good chance he ends up in Atlanta. I don't think the Falcons are going to trade for him or anything like that, but I know everyone hates that, but I think Ryan Tannehill, if he does end up signing here, it's either going to be as Ridder's backup or as the starter, but I think it'll be clear which one it is when he signs. It'll either be that Ridder sort of flops next week and we're like, okay, we can't do this, and then they bring in Tannehill to be the starter, or maybe Tannehill doesn't get a lot of interest after being cut, reunites with Arthur Smith because he thinks he might have a chance to get back on the field and have a great season. I think Ryan Tannehill ending up in Atlanta as Ridder's backup is probably like the best case scenario for this team because Tannehill is a perfectly capable starter that could step in if needed. That's a great backup situation. I don't know if he would agree to do that. He's probably going to want too much money. I think some team could give him a contract, but the equalizer could be Tannehill has looked like a great quarterback with Arthur Smith and no one else. So if the most important thing to him is having a chance to reunite with Smith, and if he does end up on the field, that he could resurrect his career with another great season in relief, which is how he originally started with the Titans, then that could be the great equalizer because those relationships are so key, not just in the NFL, but everywhere, but especially when trying to sign free agents in the NFL. And the Falcons have enough money to potentially give Tannehill like 10, 12 million or whatever, if that's what he wants to be one of the best backups in the NFL. Wouldn't necessarily hate it but we'll have to see. We'll have to see what the Falcons do and how Ridder plays this last week. All right. So I know we have a lot of draft and free agency questions. You guys already know my thoughts on center, right? I think this game was another example of like Drew Dahlman. I don't think he's it. Like I think he's a fine top backup. That if he has to come in and start for half a season or a few games, you're perfectly happy with what he's going to give you. He's not going to tank your offense. He's going to be fine. But you need more. Like that from your starter, you need more. At center is so important. I think it's criminally underrated by the NFL at large as being so important to an offense, to the way the whole unit functions. And I think if you have a below average center or just an average center, it just caps the ceiling of your offensive line so much. And to me, I would spend big or get a good or spend a premium draft pick, like that second round pick, to get a top center in here, because that, I think you nail that spot and this offensive line becomes like the best offensive line in the NFL. Like I think if you can nail down center with like if they happen to get Creed Humphrey, for example, going to keep bringing that up. I think this would be like considered one of the best offensive lines in football. They'd be a lot better at pass protecting and picking up those blitzes, which has really been what's killed them. I don't think straight up they've just been getting dominated. I think they just don't handle blitzes well. They don't communicate well. The protections aren't on point. I think it's a lot to expect Ridder to be able to do that at this point. Like that, they're probably going to need to rely on the center to be able to handle that. So I think we need to upgrade that spot. That's going to be a big point of emphasis for me. I'm going to really pound the table for that in the draft or free agency. But again, it's not a good free agency class. I suspect Ethan Pochik's going to get an enormous contract as like the top free agent center. And I just don't think he's worth it. I think he's been fine. I think he's been pretty good this year, but overall it hasn't been great. So if they are going to spend, that would be the guy that I would say go for. But I would rather draft like a John Michael Schmitz, a Cedric Van Pran if he comes out. I know Aaron Freeman's a fan of Luke Whippler. So, this is a very good deep center class. I think you can get some good guys. But I would love that. And Dr. Ganja, nice name. Schmitz is going either late first, early second. I guarantee it. Like Schmitz is the top, maybe the top interior lineman in this class, depending. I think if you're a power scheme, maybe you have Osiris Torrance a little bit higher. But if you're not a pure power scheme, and the Falcons are not for reference, then I think you probably have Schmitz higher. And Schmitz is definitely big enough to play guard too. So I love John Michael Schmitz. I think he's a potential Pro Bowl center. I think Cedric Van Pran is a very good center too. So he's somebody that I like. That's a big point of emphasis for me. You guys know how big a point of emphasis the defensive line is. That's not gonna change. That's gonna be the top. That's gonna be the top need, bar none. Corner. If you listened to my show a couple days ago, sort of talking about their needs. I haven't really budged off that based on this game. I do think getting another corner in here is important. A tops like a really good safety is really important. Multiple defensive linemen, an edge, like another edge, like they really need that. And Doctor, again, like trading down in the first could be an option. Like if someone's trying to move up, like say the Falcons are picking 7th, right, or 6th, and someone's looking to get Will Levis, because I think the Panthers are probably going to try to trade up for one of the top 2 quarterbacks. The Falcons could be sitting there at 6 or 7 with Will Levis still on the board, and we could have potential opportunity to trade down in that situation, right? So that could be one to monitor. Like Washington's definitely one to watch. Green Bay, I think, is a sneaky team for quarterback. They definitely have Aaron Rodgers for a few more years, but he's slowing down. The Jets, are they going to roll with Mike White, really? Seattle, are they committed to Geno Smith? We'll see. But there's definitely some potential. Tampa Bay, I mean, the Falcons are going to trade with them. But there's definitely some potential opportunities to trade down if the Falcons are in about the same spot they are now. But yeah, I mean that not a whole lot more to hit in terms of this game. I think the special teams deserves a lot of credit. That blocked punt was absolutely crucial. They scored a touchdown the very next play. That was huge for them. I think that they had good coverage all game. Younghoe Koo was great. Bradley Pinion's punt, that was beautiful. I don't remember a better punt than that. And I mean, I've seen a lot of punts. That was absolutely perfect. 62-yard punt. Skips out right at the 1. I mean, you can't draw it up any better than that. Pay that man. Get him back in Atlanta in 2023. No questions asked. Just a thing of beauty, Bradley Pinion on that punt. Just all the props in the world to that man for that play. Just a tremendous one. Pinion's just going to be 29 in 2023. Same age as Younghoe Koo. That could be a long-term pairing. I love it. Let's Pinion, you've earned it, buddy. You've punted very well this season. The special teams for Atlanta has largely been on point all year. They played a big role in this one too. Big props to Pinion, to Koo, and to Marquise Williams for putting this together. I think this is a very good special teams unit, very sound, and it's something that will matter a lot when they get the rest of this roster up to speed. Having that great special teams, it will be the equalizer. It will be an advantage that they can carry into the more competitive games that they'll face, that they can really rely on having a top-tier special teams unit, and don't discount that. I think that is something meaningful. They've managed to put this together. That's why I think guys like Kadarius Hodge and Mike Ford could definitely come back. Kadarius Hodge, I think, has been a really good special teamer. And a solid receiver too. So I think they've done a great job putting this special teams unit together with the limited resources they've had. They've been able to nail that down, and I think that's something they should continue to keep pounding. Not Panthers pounding, but keep making that one of your primary things that you do, because every team's got to play special teams, and a lot of teams ignore it. The Falcons have not, and I think it shows that they have an excellent special team unit here in Atlanta in 2022. But that's pretty much going to do it for me tonight, folks. Thank you so much for listening. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you're watching the live show, those really help us out. If you're listening to the podcast audio, leave us that 5-star review if you enjoyed today's show. Going to have a bit of a different schedule here over the final week of the season, because I will be traveling starting on Wednesday. So there will be no Falcoholic Live on Wednesday. There will also be no post-game show live because, like I said, I will be out of town and indisposed for Week 18. I'll definitely try to tweet some takes out, but there won't be a post-game show immediately following that game. We will have a show early in the week, a podcast. We will also have a game preview for the Bucs. But I'm with the Falcons eliminated from the playoffs, I'm taking my vacation, this week. This is the cheap week to travel, folks, for those that don't know. So there won't be live shows this week, but we will have some recorded episodes for you to get you through till I get back after Week 18. And then we'll dive headfirst into the offseason, into the Senior Bowl, into the draft and free agency. So if you're interested in helping us out with the aforementioned Senior Bowl fund, you could donate at streamlabs.com/thefalcoholic/tip. You can also donate on Venmo by going to my Twitter, which is at FalcoholicKevin. Thank you so much for that. If you're interested in supporting the show on a monthly basis, getting access to some exclusive perks, including the early podcast audio to this and all episodes ad-free as well, you can go to patreon.com/FalcoholicLive to sign up. We really appreciate all of you supporting us there on Patreon. Again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, celebrating what could be the last Falcons dub of the year. But hey, the Falcons are undefeated in 2023, so we can always hold on to that, right? Tremendous stuff, guys. So thanks, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live. Enjoy your New Year's Day, and we will see you next time.